Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show, late night here on Wednesday after a big 13-game slate of hoops action. A lot of weird stuff, as we talked about, would probably be the case with a bunch of teams who played their last game before the All-Star break. Now we look at Thursday's slate with 3 games only to go here, with 6 teams left, with games left before this break comes for this weekend. We're going to get into projections. I've got a few best bets already for the games tomorrow. We get ahead of some of these early lines, especially the sides and totals. And then we have that other video that comes out each and every day on the day of games. So I'll have all my player props in there, as we'll get a bunch more news from the injury reports, understand who's coming in and out of these lineups. But I do want to make clear that it's going to be some weird stuff going on, and start with the back-to-backs. But we know that this is going to be the last day before the All-Star break. Some dudes are probably checked out. Some dudes have probably asked their coach if they could maybe sit or play fewer minutes. Some of those dudes who don't really need the time, especially with some of these weird games on this one. But subscribe to the page if you would. Go ahead and like the video and jump in the comments. Let me know what you guys are playing here on Thursday. I'd love to hash it out with you guys and see how we're all feeling about the entire slate. And yeah, we'll continue to bring these to you each and every day, like I said. So getting into it, the back end here, just 2 teams on the back end of the back-to-backs. We like to keep track of that stuff so that we know that some guys might be sitting, etc. Golden State just lost a tough one to the Clips after winning for most of that game. And then Utah, they're in Utah, I should say, on Thursday. Utah played the Lakers and got handled at home, and then they've got these Warriors here. The third game is the Minnesota Timberwolves. There's 2 more games, and we'll get into all 3 of them. So let me just get into one more little PSA, word of caution. Last big slate before All-Star. Likely going to see a lot of subs getting time on Thursday. Home teams do well. That's usually the case here with how we play things when we're on the last day before the All-Star break. Definitely want to make sure you're like staying on top of this stuff up to the hour of tip off for these 3 games, because we might learn dudes are sitting, and then we're going to want to really start seeing where are these valuable props for the backups that are going to be in there, which is always what you can do around 7 p.m. Eastern. Honestly, 6:30 p.m. Eastern is usually about the time you really got to stay on it, right before the game starts. But let's get into the first game I'm looking at. It's a rematch of a recent game we had, and this is a rescheduled game from when there was that tragedy within the Warriors organization, and they didn't play the game in Utah however many weeks ago now. Now we're playing this one on Thursday night, and the Warriors are going to be without Chris Paul. Jazz have had their rotation players healthy, but we don't have an injury report for them, so we'll see what becomes of that. Some of the stuff I want to look at for these 2 teams, they're both on no rest, so let's see how they do. We're talking about the Warriors, a 6-4 record with no rest versus 26-25 on the season, so about 20-21 when they're playing on at least 1 day of rest. They score a bunch more points on no rest and give up fewer. They've been really good, to be honest, even with that 6-4 record, which is pretty good, and definitely as good for good enough for like top 10 in the league, because most teams are not above 500 when they play on no rest. So the fact that this team is averaging what we got a game total here of like 240-ish, right about that. So a little bit over 240. This is a bit below that, but I would caution because some guys might not play for the Dubs. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Klay Thompson plays limited, if any, minutes in this one. I think Steph plays. Draymond probably plays, but I don't think you're going to see them needed or playing as much. Maybe Steph, because he's just been a one-man offense on this no-rest situations. But they do allow slightly fewer points per game. The pace is slightly slower, but the offense is super efficient, and they make up slightly more threes. It's actually about like 15 to 14 there that they make when they're on no rest versus when they are on at least 1 day of rest. For the Jazz, they've been streaky, 4-5 when they've played on no rest this season. For basically the same thing against the spread as well. Same for the Dubs, 6-4 against the spread. Points per game is way down, as you can see, with no rest, and they allow fewer points per game versus the 117 that they average on the season. They are averaging much fewer there when they're on no rest. Points per game allowed also slightly fewer, and these games are just going a little bit slower, and that's a huge reason, getting fewer possessions for the Jazz when they're playing on no rest. So that's why you see that 97.8 pace versus the 99.9 that they normally play on. The threes made for them is a big deal. They don't make very many when they're playing on no rest, 11 versus the 13 that they make for the rest of the season. The next thing I want to show you here is some of the stuff for the last 5, mainly Golden State's offense versus Utah's defense. You can see the offensive rating for the Dubs over the last 5 games has been 10th best, but the rim frequency is also what I'm looking at here. So the 25th defensive rating overall for the Jazz, obviously not good. They've been one of the worst defensive teams, honestly, all year, and definitely over their last 5 to 10, even with Walker Kessler getting more minutes now down low. 23rd in defensive rim field goal percentage, which obviously not very good. The Dubs are attacking the basket outside of Curry, and Clay, most dudes are attacking. Draymond, Kuminga, B pods. Now you've got even when Wiggins has been in there, Moses Moody has been going to the basket. So they've definitely been going to the rim quite frequently, as you can see. And they've also been shooting from above the break a lot. And that's exactly where Utah has been weakest. That's why Steph Curry has gone absolutely bonkers versus this team when he's played them this season and in the past in general. They just have had no real top of the attack point defense. And that's why they've been giving up so many points to point guards, so many assists to point guards as well, and assists in general to everybody. There's just a lot of space in their defense. That's why people, and especially like Steph Curry, can just cut through it. You can see they're dead last in their last 5 defending against above the break 3-pointers with that field goal percentage. The last thing there is the net rating of the benches, because I do think that's hyper relevant in a game where, like I said, weird, wonky stuff is going to be happening in this one. It's like the very end of the season, and because it's butting up against the All-Star game and this break that everybody gets. So the bench rating is important because bench players are going to be getting a bunch more minutes, most likely. That's the guess here, and that's been what history has told us in this situation. The net rating for the bench over the last 5 and really on the season for the Dubs has been incredible. 4th best. It's a big reason for why they've had a bit of a turnaround, especially over the last 3 weeks or so. The net rating for the bench for the Jazz, they've thinned out, if anything, right? They've given up more dudes to receive less back so that they can sort of free up some space, and that's really what they're about at this point. And that's a big reason why their bench has been, slightly worse than middle of the pack, right around middle of the pack, and continues to get worse and probably will continue to be worse. Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji, they've both been helpful in Toronto already, as we've seen them really bolster that bench, which was really, really thin in Toronto. And now that's a big reason why the Jazz one's much more depleted. So first bet here, I am going to put a -1 in here for Golden State. And it is heavily predicated on this bench because there's weirdness going on, but at least we can bank on the fact that dudes like Brandon Pajemski, Kuminga, Moody, even Gary Payton II, these dudes will be in there pretty frequently and probably have a majority of the minutes with good measure and for good reason. I think we'll even see some Trace Jackson Davis in there, who has not gotten minutes in a while. But this might be a game that's pretty good for him with not a decent front court for Utah, but a good opportunity for him. So we'll put a full unit on it and we get almost even money there. But I've also got one lean here because I don't have any player props out, but I think B-Pods is on the up and up for another really good night. I made this bet and put this in here in the video before I really saw the end of this game with the Warriors on Wednesday here against the Clippers, where Pajemski went clean off. I believe he ended with 25. He still added a whole bunch of rebounds and assists as well. And so I think he's going to keep going. Like I'm not just picking this because I just saw him do well. I picked it before I saw him do well. I did see Clay get a ton of minutes tonight. He might sit. Not positive on that one, but either way, I think that Pajemski's right to get more minutes than a guy like Clay in this one. And when you've seen him play without Clay, he's gotten 6 more minutes than the 25 that he averages on the season, averaging about 22 points, rebounds, and assists, a little bit better than that. And on the back-to-back, maybe even more important, and also a little bit relevant to the Clay minutes here, he's gone over in 5 of the last 6 games. He played 2 other back-to-backs where he was on no rest, and that was at the beginning of the season, and I'm not really going to put much stock in it because he still wasn't getting very many minutes. He got like 25. And the minutes are what's key here for B-Pods, right? 32 minutes a game in those 6 back-to-backs, 13.3 points, 7.7 boards, and basically 5 assists, right? So he gets over this number with the rebounds and the points per game. I put the 20 PRA out there because I have him projected at about 23, and I do think the books are going to put him at about 20.5. That's what we've seen from him in the line that they set for him over the course of the last, basically a couple of weeks. That shouldn't change too much unless the books want to try to bake in the idea of what I'm saying, which is he plays more on these back-to-backs. I don't know that they're looking that much into it, accounting for that type of stuff. Maybe they are. And if they do and do it properly, we probably see this at 22.5 because that's what I think it should be at. So if I get that 2 extra points of or rebounds and assists of cushion, like I'm going to take it. And like I said, all about the minutes. In the last 9 games where he played 28 plus, he's gone over in 8 of them. And we've only seen him get more comfortable. We've only seen those minutes continue to stay up without Chris Paul. So let me get over 20.5. I'll be putting this out, obviously, in the video that comes out tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, so I can make sure that you know exactly how I'm playing it. So do subscribe to that page. All right, second game that we're looking at here, the Timberwolves are at Portland. Again, we just saw this game, home, as they say, because they were in Portland for that last one. It's a 216.5 total, and we've got the Timberwolves here at -8.5. I don't like that, to be honest with you. Like, if I'm putting any money on a side here, it's not taking the points with the Timberwolves. Although, knowing the way that they've played and covered a lot this season, they'll just be down or, right around even with this team for most of the game. And then the fourth quarter, they'll outscore them by like 15 points. And that'll be why they still have the 1 seed in the West. But let's look at the sort of the mismatches here for the play that I have for this game. Basing what I'm doing here on the stats here, offensive rating for the Timberwolves over their last 5, really good. They've been 3rd best. Defensive rating for the Blazers, really bad. They've been bad all season. They've missed a lot of Malcolm Brogdon, and they've missed a lot of DeAndre Ayton over the last couple weeks. And those dudes are wildly important. Without both of them, or just one of them, the defensive rating for this team goes from about 117 on the season to 124, 125. And that's the same number for both Ayton and Brogdon. Brogdon is out in this one. I should have showed you the injury report here first as well. There you go. You can see Malcolm Brogdon is out. Ant is questionable as well. And I don't have a read on that at all, to be honest with you. He's been on there a number of times and still play. He probably could play. Like, let me put it this way. If it was a playoff game, he would 110% be playing. So that lets you know that he's healthy. They just have him as questionable. Maybe they don't really want to put him out there against this awful Blazers team. But I imagine he plays, and then if they don't need him, he sits. But I think they will need him because I don't think this game's going to be as big of a blowout, even the 12 points that we just saw in the last one. All right, back to the mismatch graphic. I'm looking at the offensive rating for the Timberwolves. Obviously, the defensive rating for the Blazers, been awful. Brogdon out, we know that. Going to be much worse. The offensive rebound percentage is also going to be huge here. As you can see, the Timberwolves are getting a ton of second chance points. They're getting a bunch of boards on offense. And then the Trailblazers are not stopping that at all. Even with Ayton in there getting a lot of rebounds, it's still been a big problem for them. In addition to struggling down low to limit dudes from getting offensive rebounds and putting them back up, they also are struggling right at the top of that defense. Guys like Anthony Simons, undersized guards, even Malcolm Brogdon's pretty good defender. He's not going to be out there. If Scoot is out there, and he's probable to play in this game, really bad defender at this point. He's just getting cooked. So that's why, like, dudes like Mike Conley, if Ant is out there and he wants to shoot from up top, if Ant is not out there, I think Cat is going to do well. I think Cat's going to have a bunch of threes if Ant is not out there as well. And we'll probably be targeting some Karl Anthony Towns 3-point props because he does shoot a ton of his shots and his 3-pointers from the top of the key, where as we see, the Trailblazers are super vulnerable. The reason I'm going to tell you about this over I'm about to bet is because of this free throw attempt rate for both teams. And we saw that in the last game, shooting a bunch of free throws for both of them because they're both not good at limiting free throws. They foul when you get down low. They would rather put you at the line than give up layups. And really, for the Blazers, they just don't have a choice because they don't have the weapons on defense to limit you down low. And so they end up fouling. So both of these teams, actually, the free throw rate for the Blazers has been better over the last 5 than even the Timberwolves, who attack the basket at will. But they both are just giving up a ton as well. So that is why I like an over in this game at 216.5. It did go up to 221 last game, right? Is what we saw what that was at. So I'm putting a half a unit on this as well. Apologies for not putting the unit size there, but it is a half a unit. I'll have that on the best bets final summary slide tomorrow at 3 p.m. as well. So make sure you check that out. And then the last game that I have here, I have a lean for it, and that is the Milwaukee and the Memphis game here. And you can see that Chris Middleton is going to be out, and then we're also going to be looking at Dame and Giannis playing. And I wanted to put that in there because I do think it's hyper relevant to mention that they're on the report, but they're acknowledging the report is acknowledging that they're going to play. The Grizzlies haven't submitted theirs yet. I mean, they just tried out a different sort of slew of dudes who are fringe NBA players consistently anyway. And they have some guys that could probably help a rotation, but it's all bad out in Memphis right now. Let's just take a look at some of the key stats that I'm looking at for the lean that I have for this game. And it is based on how both these teams are playing on both sides of the floor, which is similarly where they're not very good on offense right now, and they're really good on defense. And the Bucks, I'm not going to say they're not good on offense. They have 2 of the best players in the NBA. But there is a little bit of stagnancy at times to this offense. And when they go up against a grind city team like the Memphis Grizzlies, then it's going to get a little nasty. And Memphis hasn't even had necessarily a really good offensive or defensive rating as much as, you know, what they're known for and what they've had in the past when they have guys like Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, etc., even Desmond Bane and whatever. The pace has been super slow for them, and that's been the case for the Bucks as well. That's why in their last 9, they're 8-1 to the under are the Milwaukee Bucks. Even before Doc Rivers got there, there was a lot of slow play going on with this team and a little bit choppier on offense, not quite as effective when they're playing in the half court as opposed to in the fast break. The above the break 3-point frequency for them continues to be high. because they have Dame Lillard and because they have Brook Lopez. Both of those dudes shoot a ton of threes, a combined like 14-ish three-pointers between both of them on the season from that spot. So they're going to keep shooting from up there. And there's really not much up there in the way of defense because there's no point guards for this team. There's like a hobbled Derrick Rose who sometimes gets in the game. There's Jacob Gilyard, household name and favorite, who's just not a defender. And so there's going to be some problems there. Same concept on the other side. I mean, Dame is the top of the defense for the Bucks, and he's not doing much to limit stuff there. And then you've got Jaren Jackson just pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. Stop me if you've heard this before. Just never stop shooting for the Memphis Grizzlies. He's the dude who gets up all the shots every game. And that's why these above the break three-pointers are so frequent for the Memphis Grizzlies, because that's where Jaren Jackson Jr. shoots from, and he's the one taking all the shots. All that is to say, I kind of like an under. I do like how both these teams are playing defense. Even if the Bucks regress a little bit on defense, this Memphis Grizzlies team is just the formula, I should say, to go ahead and get back into your good defensive ways. Even if there's a lot of room for error, right? Like they're not going to make wide open shots. Let's put it that way. So the Bucks have room for error. I could see this staying close, but the Bucks are coming off a loss. So it seems like they should really come out and try to win this game, at least have some momentum going into the All-Star break here. So that is all the time that I have for you guys in this one. Continue to follow along. We do have the video coming out tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll have that up for you with the final plays and the play of props and the best bets once we have those lines out for you. Definitely want to come back for the All-Star Weekend edition that I'm going to have for you as well, coming out before Saturday, so that we can get ahead of the dunk contest and three-point contest and all the fun stuff we want to bet on, as well as all the stuff we can bet on in the game on Sunday. So best of luck out there, and until I see you next, which is tomorrow, happy betting.